Now, today is day 3 of the countrywide vaccination rollout for COVID for those above the age of 60 and those above the age of 45 years with serious illnesses. The centre has now permitted all private hospitals to give COVID vaccines if they adhere to the laid down norms, and also asked states and union territories to utilize the optimum capacity of private medical facilities empanelled under the 3 categories. Hospitals can also now extend vaccine sessions. So, in the first couple of days, that's the first 2 days only, we've been seeing some amount of crowds at hospitals. So now the government trying to ease all that, any sort of logjam. So the hospitals, more private hospitals are allowed to give the vaccines. Also, the timing has been extended. The health minister, in fact, tweeted saying that limitations on vaccine timings have been removed in order to step up the pace of vaccinations, and that citizens can get vaccinated as per their convenience 24/7. There have been 50 lakh registrations on the CoWIN website so far. Well, to talk more about the various issues we're discussing today, we're joined by Dr. D. Prabhakaran, Vice President, Research and Policy and Director, Centre for Control of Chronic Conditions, PHFI. We also have Anant Bhan, Researcher in Bioethics, Global Health and Policy. So, Dr. Prabhakaran, first the question about, the government bringing all these changes, which is very, very welcome, isn't it? So that more and more people can get vaccinated and we don't see crowds at the vaccine centres. So more private hospitals allowed and the timings have also been increased.
I think that's a very good move. Thank you, Gargi, for having me on the show. I think it's a very good move by the government to increase access to people in terms of where they get the vaccination, both in terms of place as well as in terms of the timings. That would avoid crowd and prevent the vaccination process itself becoming a source for increased infection. So I think it's a very good move.
Right. Anand Bhan, your comments on this, because first 2 days we have seen there have been some glitches reported. Some hospitals had a problem loading the IDs or loading up the CoWIN platform. So now with the government there allowing more flexibility, so more and more people can get vaccinated during this period.
Yes, thanks Gargi for having me. So I think at this point of time we recognize that the vaccination effort is a crucial part of our public health response. And in fact, now with concerns around cases increasing in a few states, we also want to ramp up our vaccination efforts so that we get more coverage as soon as possible. So towards this, you certainly want to make vaccines available as broadly as possible. So the involvement of more private institutions is welcome. We also want to ensure that the coverage is as broad as possible in terms of the population. So I think that's where we have now the over 60 years covered already. And then we have those between 45 and 59 with certain comorbidities. I think, there is a concern that maybe that list is a little bit more restrictive than it should be, though hopefully the expert committee is considering that. I do want to raise one additional concern, which is around equity. If you involve more and more private hospitals, that might help expand access, especially in urban areas, for those who might have resources. But we know that in rural areas, we have a health system where both on the private and public side, we have facilities which are scanty relatively, and there especially we need to ensure that the government also steps up in terms of having more vaccination centers and making vaccines available as broadly as possible, because that is also an important part of our response, and we recognize that there might be actually many more people at risk in rural areas who have not yet been exposed to the virus.
Right, absolutely a very important point there about the comorbidities. We're going to come to that in just a moment. But Dr. Prabhakaran, in the first phase of vaccinations, it wasn't as quick as we would have liked it to be. The aim was to get 3 crore people vaccinated in that first phase. However, there were issues, there were technical issues, there were also concerns, hesitancy, etc. But now in this phase, now we're aiming that by August we'll have 30 crore people vaccinated in all, isn't it?
Yes, true. I think there will always be this learning curve when we start something on this scale, and that's what happened initially. Also, there was a little bit of vaccine hesitancy. I think that's coming down, which is good, especially with people at the highest level taking the vaccine and showing the path. So I suppose, given all that, the hesitancy is coming down, and the learning curve in terms of the glitches with the app and other things will come down. So hopefully in the next, say 2 weeks or 3 weeks, things will get even more smoother.
Right. In fact, today even the president was vaccinated. So more and more leaders, they're coming forward now. let's come to the second part of what I wanted to discuss today with you, and it's about this very concerning case in Maharashtra where a 45-year-old man died yesterday shortly after he took the second dose of the anti-COVID vaccine. Sukhdev Kirdat from Bhiwandi was working as a driver with an eye specialist, and he fainted in the observation room. Remember, after the vaccine, you're made to sit for half an hour in observation room, and after around 15 minutes of taking the second dose, he fainted. He was then rushed to a nearby hospital, Indira Gandhi Memorial Hospital, where he was declared dead. Now, doctors say the cause of his death is not yet known and may be clearer after the post-mortem. He'd taken his first dose on January 28th as a health worker. Let's just first listen to what the doctor said.
तो चेकअप में ये मालूमात पड़ा कि उनको ब्लड प्रेशर की बीमारी काफ़ी सालों से थी और बीपी चेकअप किया गया तो बीपी नॉर्मल था, सब उनका ऑक्सीजन नॉर्मल था, सब नॉर्मल था, इसलिए उनको सेकंड डोज दिया गया। डोज देने के बाद उनको ऑब्जर्वेशन रूम में बिठाया गया। वहाँ पर करीबन 15 मिनट वो ऑब्जर्वेशन रूम में बैठे थे। उसके बाद उनको चक्कर आया और चक्कर आने की वजह से वो गिर गए। इमीडिएट जो इमरजेंसी इलाज करने की कोशिश की और ऐसा होने लगा कि इनको अभी हॉस्पिटल ले जाने की ज़रूरत है। एक तुरंत वहाँ से IGM हॉस्पिटल में लेकर आए थे। मृत्यु का कारण इस वक्त बताना मुश्किल है क्योंकि अभी उनका पोस्टमार्टम होगा। जो वैक्सीन की यहाँ पर दिए गए हैं उसका पूरा मुआयना कर रहे हैं।
All right, Dr. Prabhakaran, I'd like to ask you on this. And again, like I'm saying, we don't want to panic people or, create any sort of anxiety. But this is something that is concerning. And as the doctor said, we need answers. And hopefully the post-mortem, they will share with us what exactly happened.
So, just to be clear, it will be very, very premature for us to speculate as to what the cause of death is. But if you look at, to put things in perspective, in the United States, there have been close to 76 million vaccinations done. There have been 1,300, 1,400 odd deaths. So what happens after the deaths is that the doctors look at either autopsy report or all the other factors that they have, other resources that they have, and they have declared none of these have been related to vaccine deaths. In fact, if you look at severe allergies and deaths related to severe allergies, it's in the order of 1 in a million virtually. So I think it's for us, it will not be correct now to speculate the real reasons for this deaths, and let's wait for the reports, the coroner's or the autopsy report to come.
All right. Well, thanks, for commenting on that. Now we come to the other topic we want to discuss today. The Union Health Ministry's list of 20 comorbidities. Those are serious illnesses that make people in the 45 years to 59-year age group eligible for COVID vaccine is now being seen by some medical professionals as too narrow. Hypertension is one of the common conditions that increases the risk of progressing to severe COVID disease and even death. However, people with hypertension alone are not eligible according to this list unless it is accompanied by other diseases such as diabetes or conditions such as angina. Even diabetes, there are certain parameters that have been put in terms of what is acceptable for diabetes, and that too it would have to be clubbed with another illness. So Anand Bhan, this is something that you were talking about. You feel that this list is too narrow at this point, for those between 45 to 59 years of age.
Yeah, so listen, Gagi, there's a few things. One, we are already recognizing that the government wants to expand coverage. That's why they've increased the number of facilities over the last couple of days. And partly the reason is you want more of those who are eligible to get the vaccine as fast as possible and in as less restrictive manner as possible and with low risk attached to it. Now, between 45 and 59, what we right now have is a list which has gone through an expert review. Dr. Prabhakaran is part of that group, and they're all fairly experienced. I guess the only concerns are that if this were to be more broader and less restrictive, it would have a few advantages. One, we would probably cover a whole lot of more people who might be potentially at risk. We would be probably not confusing a lot of people with the kind of requirements right now to have multiple comorbidities. And it probably does not cover some sections of the population who might be similarly at risk, for example, those with severe mental disorders. So hopefully this will also be a living list and it will be updated on a regular basis, and I'm sure the expert panel will look at this. It might just be better to go with a simpler list which is more easier to comprehend both for those who might be eligible, for the practitioners, and just makes access more easy and does not complicate things unnecessarily.
Right, Dr. Prabhakaran, as somebody who's been a part of this effort, your response to that?
So first of all, I take the point which Dr. Bhan is pointing out, but I think we have to make a start somewhere. Just to put things in perspective, if you just consider the 4 major comorbid conditions which can increase COVID-19 deaths, that's cardiovascular disease, hypertension, diabetes, and cancer, it accounts for almost 300 million population in this country. And a vast majority of them will be above the age of 60 years. I think close to 60% or so would be my guess, or 70% even. The remaining are below the age of 60 years, and the list that has been put out covers close to 70-80% of those population. I mean, one should look at whether the list is good or perfect. I think it's a good list, and I think that's the best that can be done at this circumstance. But the point about severe mental illness or using simple criteria is very well taken, and I think the way the government is ramping up the vaccination, I think everybody will be covered sooner. The other point that I wanted to make is that while hypertension is an important risk factor, most of the data has come from Western countries, and there is an interaction with age. As you are older and you have hypertension, the risk of having complications is higher. Younger people with hypertension, the complications is lower. So in that sense, a little delay in them getting into the vaccination system is, I think, okay.
Right, Dr. Bhan, your response to that, and also when you say that it should be a bit simpler, if you could just give us a few examples.
Yeah, for example, globally, obesity is certainly considered a risk factor. It is not specifically mentioned per se in the list. I think the way you have to interpret this list is you need to have a certain set of conditions often together or for a certain period of time, and that might just end up confusing. I'm sure you, most of us have senior citizens in our families or in our network, or individuals who would fall between 45 and 59 who have some of these conditions, and we are all getting queries because everyone is a bit confused. And also the requirement to have to go to a practitioner, get that certification done. It is multiple hoops which people have to go through. Perhaps there is a way to make this simpler just so that we can expand our vaccination base, which is why I'm sure what all of us want, so that those who are at risk are given vaccines on a priority basis. I think we have enough doses now based on what the companies are saying. So I don't think that per se is a problem. But yes, you have to be cautious as well, as Dr. Prabhakaran is rightly saying. In this age group, also with comorbidities, I think we have to be cognizant of the risk because it's a population with all of those conditions. So we should be extra careful about any adverse events. But that is part of the learning curve as well.
Right, and so Dr. Prabhakaran, when can we expect some sort of changes to this? As you said, it's a good start, but to make it even better in terms of what experts are saying and this criticism of it being too narrow.
So I'm sorry, I don't have that information as of now, but hopefully
sure.
It will come soon.
Sure, that will come soon. Also, there's a criticism about this point about it, confusion about what sort of, comorbidities, and when it talks about diabetes, it says, prolonged diabetes, etc. And all these things aren't specified. This is also something that I've heard as criticism.
Yeah, that, let's take the example of diabetes. It says you should have diabetes for more than 10 years and along with that have hypertension or cardiovascular diseases. Now, when you look at diabetes, the diabetic population, the highest risk is for people who have had it for a longer duration, like more than 10 years. And of these people who have had it longer for 10 years, the association with hypertension and cardiovascular disease will be high. Almost 2/3 of them will have one of these. So in a sense, you're covering almost 2/3 of the population. If you add age as the criteria, that is more than 60 years, which is universal, again, you would almost reach to 75-80% of the population. It's that 20% which is remaining, but it's also a low risk population. So in a sense, it's easier because a doctor has to certify, they will look at these 20 conditions and certify the person to receive vaccine. But having said that, your point as well as Dr. Bhan's point is very well taken, but let's not make the good enemy of the perfect, as I say.
Right, absolutely. Dr. Bhan, if you could just tell us, about what sort of queries have come to you, because a lot of people are very confused. Comorbidities, what does this mean exactly? I know it's something that even I've learned over the last year covering coronavirus, etc. But, and who qualifies, who doesn't, etc., etc. You must be getting so many queries about this.
Yeah, I'm sure all of us are. Listen, I think, Dr. Prabhakaran, me, you, I think, we are part of in that sense, the elite who have access to information. We probably have access to practitioners. Some of us are medical professionals. Some of us have people in our network who are medical professionals. For most people, this will be a bit difficult to understand, and this would also mean that they would need to try to get to their practitioner or the health professional that they work with and try to get some clarity. I think there might be a way of making even the existing list a bit more simpler to understand for a lay person, and perhaps that is the health communication part, and that is hopefully something that the ministry can focus on. So while the list is being reconsidered, I'm sure by the expert group, we can probably make it easier to comprehend also, just so that you have less rush going to the centers. As we saw visuals over the last couple of days, a lot of people who are keen on getting the vaccination. You don't want that to become a risk factor in itself. Too many people crowding facilities and then exposing them potentially to infection.
Right, absolutely. And clearly the government is working on that because it's day 3 and already they've included more private hospitals. They've included a longer timings 24/7. Thank you so much, Dr. Prabhakaran and Dr. Anand Bhan, for joining us on the show today and talking about this issue and explaining it to us. Welcome back. It's time now for our viewer question segment on the show, and we're joined by Dr. Vikas Maurya, Director and Head of Pulmonology, Fortis Hospital, Shalimar Bagh. Thank you so much for joining us again, Doctor. Let's listen into that first question.
My question is, can we still transmit COVID even after being vaccinated?
So can one transmit coronavirus even if you've got the vaccine? Because this is something that is being talked about, how you can still transmit it even though you're protected against it, and that's causing a lot of confusion.
See, first we have to understand that this is a vaccine which is going to prevent us from the moderate to severe form of the disease. It's like that, for example, it's not that you will completely, you may not get the virus. You may get the virus, but you may be asymptomatic or maybe a very minor form of the disease. See, predominantly it will prevent you even with that also. For example, if you say about efficacy around, for example, 60% efficacy or 80% efficacy, so you may not be able to acquire the virus. But in case, if you acquire the virus, you may be just asymptomatic or maybe mild. So in that case, it may be possible that you may be able to transmit the virus to the other person who have not been vaccinated, right? And they may get the moderate to severe disease. So yes, so therefore what we are saying is that you have to continue with the precautions till the time everybody gets the vaccine. You continue to have the mask, the physical distancing, hygiene that should be followed sincerely.
All right, the next question is a Twitter question sent by one of our viewers, and Arkaja Singh asks, should people on blood thinners get the vaccine, and what precautions should they take if they're getting the vaccine? This is a question we've received quite a bit regarding blood thinners and getting vaccinated. Many people asking for their parents, and I believe there are 2 different types of blood thinners. Doctor, if you could tell us.
Yeah, I think, it's very important to say, this is a very important question. Many people ask about it. Yes, earlier because it was it was written in the contraindication of one of the vaccine, but later on I think it was clarified that yes, any people who are on blood thinner, like for example antiplatelet or anticoagulants like thinner, they can have the vaccine. Actually, the issue was that if you're giving the jab, you may have the blood might come out in your muscle and you may have some problem. But I think still, if we see, people are taking the other vaccine so far. So, except that you don't have any other contraindication. For example, as I said, that if you get a jab, some on out, but there are contraindication no more. So it has already been clarified that even if those patients who are having a blood thinner, they can get the vaccine. So I think you should go for the vaccine if you have been you come under the category of 45 to 60 years or more than 60 years of age. The only thing is that you just have to tell the place where you are going for the vaccine that you are on blood thinners. Otherwise, there is no contraindication that for blood thinners to get the vaccine.
All right, so that's I hope that clarifies that point. We have one last question from a young viewer. Let's listen in.
Hello, doctor. I am Moksha Kaushik from Delhi. My question is, will the vaccine end the pandemic?
All right, very basic question. Will the vaccine end the pandemic?
See, it's a very good question, and the issue is that the pandemic, when it's going to end, is a very difficult question. But yes, the pandemic will continue. We have with the vaccine, it's a hope that we have had at this moment, that we are able to decrease the transmission of the virus to other people. And if we are able to decrease the transmission to a certain level, and by the time we also achieve some sort of herd immunity, so both of these things may be able to obviously decrease, end the pandemic, because apart from it, we don't have any other choice. So yes, vaccine is a hope for the humanity that we are going to end the pandemic. Obviously, it may happen sooner. It may happen at some period of time, obviously, but yes, the hope is there.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Boria, for answering all those questions for us.